Okay, in the last video, we went over where to get Gait Locomotion system, where to download it from the repo, where to download the example project, and then how to build it. And then there's a video for that on YouTube now, and I'll link that in the description. After that, it's going to open up like this. I haven't really done too much to this. I basically just built a player controller example and put the things where they should be. So you should have your inputs located in your player controller for anything that's not a unique input to that pawn. So after that, the only other thing I did was really create a base class, which does not have a mesh or anything like that. It pretty much just houses components because it's easier for memory. And then there's a child. The child has the mesh. It is set to the anim class of the main anim instance, and I'll go over that in a minute. That on begin play will delay until next tick because it doesn't always want to initialize on the first frame, and then it's going to link anim class layers. Normally, this would be done with weapon data or something like that, which sets the anim layers on equip. That's what it says in the comment, and that's true. And then also, it's best to do it with an RPC if you're doing anything replicated, because this is not replicated. So I'll eventually go over how to do a simple RPC with them as well. But as for today, we're just going to go over making a super simple animation graph. So I'm going to make a folder called tutorial series in here. And we're going to start by making an animation layer interface, ALI basic anim interface, then 2 animation blueprints. One of them, choose our skeleton of course. One of them is going to be the Gait Locomotion anim instance. This is the main anim instance, and you can see if you read the comment, it's the primary anim instance. And basically it's gonna house all this state-based logic, and you'll understand what that means here in a second. We'll call that ABP humanoid base instance. And the reason why I'm going to call it this is because eventually here I am going to release the humanoid turn in place, procedural turn in place function that I have. And the main anim instance that I'm going to be building in this tutorial series is going to be based around humanoids because it's based around the mannequin. So yeah, it's just easier than building for edge cases. So we have that, and then I'm going to go down here and choose the Gait Locomotion layer anim instance as my second part. And this is going to act like the parent for the cartridge that will get loaded into the states of the base anim instance. And that sounds a little confusing at first, but it'll sort of make sense here after. Layer instance. Okay. So we have 3 main classes here. We have our animation layer interface, and then we have our base instance, and we have our layer instance. Now, our layer interface is going to act like the communication device between the 2 interfaces. So in here, we're going to add 2 things starting. We're going to add idle state, and we're going to add, let's call it walk run state. I kind of want to call it something different. Maybe cycle state. Yeah, I'm going to call it cycle state. I'm second guessing myself now. Really quickly just going to double check the example because I am notorious for that. And of course I choose the wrong one. Oh, this one will work. Yeah, okay, idle cycle reading. Okay, go ahead. Better safe than sorry. Anyway. So inside of our base, this is going to contain our state data. And this is going to contain our layer data. This has our 2 states in it. And those will be communicated through the interface. So we're going to add the interface here as the basic anim interface on both the layer and the base. But there will be a difference here. Okay, so now that they're added, you can see that the functions have been added as animation layers on the side of the base as well as the layer interface. But you don't want to open them up like this and add code except on the layers. So on the base itself, the base will kind of have slots, we're going to call them, where the cartridges of the layers will get loaded into, and that'll make sense here in a second. So really quickly, I'm going to start making a state machine, and this will just be called Locomotion. And I'm going to change the max transitions per frame to 1. Unlock that up. Open this up. We're going to have our first state. It's going to be called idle. Our second state will be called cycle. And this is going to be super, super simple. So if you watch the other GLS video, you'll see that a ton of variables are exposed. And you can just go to variables, Gait Loco, and then you can see how many things are exposed for various functions. But for this, I mean, if we're going between idle to cycle, the only thing that you would think is that I am not. And then we're going to add property access, because property access is a better way to access variables that are thread safe. I am not idle. So if I'm not idle, I'm going to go from idle to cycle. And then if I am cycle to idle, well, clearly I'm idle. Simple as that. Now, inside of these, there's nothing, right? But what we want is we want an idle state. And you can see all these anim node functions that come up and stuff like that. We're actually looking for is the linked anim layers. So you can see ALI basic anim interface, which you definitely want that as a target, and then hook that up, and then it'll just change to that. And it'll look like nothing, and there's nothing, no class is loaded, no nothing. And basically you can see the instance class here. This is the socket that class, that layer class is going to get put into. So that's why it doesn't need anything, is because what gets loaded in is going to be put into that slot. And like that, we'll go cycle state, and that'll come up with this. And then we have our cycle state set up. Get out of my way. Okay, so now this seems super simple already. But inside of our animation graph, we just have a locomotion state machine, and it just has an idle and a cycle. Those idles and cycles just have layers that are acting like sockets. That's it. We're good. Now we move on to the layer instance. And then the layer instance is where you sort of put more like the what sequence is going to be played. But because a lot of what is going to happen here is going to be under the hood, I'm going to put descriptions in, because I forgot to do that for the one thing, saying what animations are being selected and why. And aside from that, they're pretty much just going to be update functions. So just a really simple way of putting these in is going to be a sequence player. Now the one thing is, because the animations are being updated dynamically, you have to change the sequence to a dynamic value. In this instance, we're not going to have to change anything other than that for idle, because idle is not going to have any play rate changes or anything like cycle will. Cycle will have play rate changes because of distance matching and different things like that. So I'm trying to figure out a way to note that, but I haven't quite figured out a great way yet. So on this, we have it set up like this. And this is where it gets a little confusing, because unfortunately Epic doesn't show stuff that I've put in here until I actually make a function. So I have to create an onUpdate function or any of these other ones. But if it's on a node, chances are it's going to be like on a sequence player, it's either going to be an onBecomeRelevant or an onUpdate. So in this instance, we know we're going to update our idle animation, right? Like that's pretty much a given. So if we're going to do that, if we update idle animation, you can see Gait Loco anim node functions onUpdate, right? And how to find all of those is now you can just go to Gait Loco anim node functions, and there's all the onBecomeRelevant and all the update functions. And you can just hover over top of them, and it's going to tell you exactly what they're doing. And as I get further, this is going to get road mapped and hopefully expand in all sorts of directions. But basically, we have our update idle state and update idle animation. The difference is that the update idle state is going to be something that's on a usually on an output node, not on an inside of here. And that's how you'll know the difference, is because a lot of the functions inside of a sequence, for example, are going to be on become relevant or on update, but they're going to say anim and not state, because state is something different. So we're going to update idle animation. I know, long description, right? And you can see that it just says on update. And if we write update idle anim, it's going to say, no, that's used by something else. So I've just gotten used to putting one space in between everything, and then they look the same, and it's easy to remember and call. After that, we're going to go to our cycle state. So this is our idle state. Super simple, just doing that thing, compiles and works. Go to our cycle state. Oh, I put that in the wrong spot. This is our idle. So now we'll go to cycle. I'll create another sequence player. I'll change this to a dynamic value. And again, I wish I had a way of noting this, but the cycle needs to be dynamic for a play rate. And I believe so does sprint. I'll have to double check that and hopefully post that in the sprint video, because I'm going to do the sprint video coming up here soon. So we're going to do on update. And we know that update cycle anim is a thing. So if I put a space in between, and spell it right, there we go. Then you can update. Oh, one other thing I should note here before I do this is, now that I've named it update cycle anim, it can get a little confusing if you call both of them, because you'll see one that says call function, which is calling this function, and one that is calling the update anim cycle in the Gait Loco anim nodes on update. So this is the correct one. This is not the correct one, even though they look identical, which is kind of the caveat to naming them the same, except it just is generally better, because again, you can still see target is Gait Locomotion layer anim instance, and that's what you want. So we'll set that up. That's hooked up. So as much as this has been a bit of a long description now, that's all I've done, is just done the base anim instance. We'll run through it super quick. Locomotion, idle, cycle. I'm not idle. Good, I'm cycling. If I'm cycling, I'm going to be this socket. Pretty easy. We'll rip out of here. Inside the layer instance, all it's doing is a sequence player of either updating the idle, that's a dynamic, or updating the cycle, that's a dynamic and a dynamic play rate. Other than that, everything's the same. Now what I want to do is I want to create a child of this. So this is going to be the layer of animations that I'm using. So we're going to call it MM unarmed, because I'm using the Lyra set just as an example. It's the easiest, and it's already pre-retargeted or retargeted to this project. That's why I use this example project for this. You can use any animations, obviously. You can use any of your own projects, do whatever you want, and it doesn't really matter, as long as they're retargeted properly. So we have all of our animations here. I probably should have opened the blueprint. Alrighty. Now for this, I'm going to search idle. We have our idle ready. And all of our animations are going to go inside of our class defaults, I believe, under details. And then our animations. So I'm just going to put a ready hip fire in, because we're not aiming. We're never going to go into aim. We're never crouching. We're never doing any of this stuff right now. This is just a basic tutorial. After that, we're just going to go to our cycles. Our cycles are going to have our walk and our run. If we had crouch, again, it would access that crouch walk, but it's not going to. So let's use walk. And this is going to be the tedious part of this video, is finding all of the correct animations quickly. Oh, those are crouch. Probably should pay attention. Walk forward. Backwards above that. And then left and right. And then we want to choose jog because they name their conventions weird. It should be run. Forward. Oh, the backwards above that, right? Left and right. So now that's done. All I've done is chosen 9 animations, the hip fire and the 9 cycle animations. How to know how it's transitioning between these two. One thing I should note, between walk and run, there is going to be a variable, and I wish there was another better way to do this, but inside of the base anim instance here, you're going to have run speed and your velocity. And this is the point, as you can see, returns run speed, what velocity value walk cycle blends into the run cycle. Generally, this should be around half. It doesn't have to be half. It kind of depends on like what your minimum speed is and how often you want your players to be walking versus running, or how you're going to be setting that. There's a lot of different variables there, because most of the time people are going to be in the run state. Okay, last quick thing. How to link the anim layers. Just like this. So we have our mesh. We're going to select our new anim instance here, which is going to be humanoid base instance. And then we have our link anim class layers here, and we're going to select the one that has the animations actually in it, not the layer parent. So we're not going to choose layer instance. We're going to choose, what is we call it? Oh no, I named 2 things the same. What have I done? Never do that. Okay. So we'll just drag this up and hopefully drop it there. Nope, it will not let me drop it there. Wonderful. There, that's the right one. Okay, now if I hit play, you can see that I'm kind of chunking around and I'm not warping or doing anything. So I'm really quickly going to fix that. It's not that I didn't remember, it's that it's a different part of it. So if I go to basic, I'm going to have an example of cycle state. Oh, I went to the wrong one. That is the parent, so I need to go to the layer instance. In the layer instance, it's going to be all of our layer examples, and one of these is going to be our cycle warping and stride warping. So I'm just going to copy this. This is all the thread safe variables. You can feel free to follow along and do those yourself. Here's the variables I have set up. Again, reference these if you're going to do your own project. But I'm just going to copy those over to my other layer here. Where is that? Tutorial series, layer instance. So this is our cycle anim, and we want our cycle anim to warp. So we'll hook that up. And then the last thing I remembered I should add is right here on the base animation graph, we're going to want to add inertialization. So actually, before I add inertialization, I'll show you what it looks like if you don't. Now I'm warping, but I still get those weird chunks. Like I'm getting the right angles now, but I'm still getting this like really bad blending going on. And the whole part of this system is that it's an inertial based blending system. So when you do that and it's done properly, it looks significantly better. And my gamepad is not working right now. Otherwise, I'd show you the difference in between walk and run and stuff, and the advantage of the cosine input in terms of not allowing you to cheat with move hacks and stuff like that. So, but I can't do that right now, so I'm just gonna end this video off like this, because that is kind of all I intended to do, was show you the basic idle and cycle states and how to implement those. And this is going to be a series, so I'll put more things in as I go along. But aside from that, I mean, yeah, like and subscribe, and we'll just see where this goes.